Hello and welcome back to the Locker Room. I'm your host Spencer Ball, and today I'm joined by Austin Nasser to discuss March Madness. Let's start off on the men's side. So 9 of the top 20 seeded men's teams have already been knocked off in the first 2 rounds. So it really opens it up for any team to, possibly win it all. So who've been some surprise teams for you thus far?
I think by far the biggest surprise thus far in the tournament has to be 15th seeded St. Peter's. Knocking off Kentucky, who is a number 2 seed, in a team that a lot of people had going far in their tournaments, even as far as the championship and winning it all. That was the shock of the tournament thus far. And then they go ahead and they get another win against Murray State to advance to the Sweet 16, and that's back-to-back years that we've had a number 15 seed in the Sweet 16. Led by Doug Eddard, they've got just a heart, and they're just the classic Cinderella story that everyone's pulling for. I think another big surprise, however, has been just when you look at the SEC as a whole, 5 of the 6 teams have already been eliminated. So you've got number 2 seeded Kentucky, number 2 seeded Auburn, who just lost to double-digit seed Miami, and then you've got number 3 seed Tennessee, who won the SEC tournament coming in. They're a hot team. A lot of people had them going far. And then also LSU and Alabama losing in the first round. So the only team left out of that conference is Arkansas. So that's another big, big surprise. I think another surprise would have to be Iowa State. Although they are a team that is definitely built for the tournament, they're gritty. They play very well on the defensive end. When you watch that Wisconsin game yesterday, that game was chippy from start to finish, lots of jump balls, and they've got a lot of heart in them. So that is a team that is naturally just built to go far in the tournament.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Touching on St. Peter's, as you mentioned, Doug Eddard just seemed to, like watching the end of both the Kentucky and the Murray State game, it was just like, once he got the ball, super efficient. It just seemed to fall for him. And their big man, Casey Nadefo, he's only 6'7", but he functions like as their team center. I believe he had 7 blocks against Murray State the other day. Definitely playing above his height, but that team's got a lot of heart. And although I think Purdue definitely poses some challenges for him, I think they've got America behind them. So who knows what they can do. But a surprise team for me has got to be the Tar Heels, the 8 seed, dominating in the first game against Marquette and then dominating the first 30 minutes of the Baylor game before Brady Manick got ejected. But they are shooting the ball lights out right now. One stat I have written down, they have 51 assists through 2 games. So they're moving the ball really well. They're playing a team game. And if they get good performances out of their guards, their big men have been really consistently solid throughout the year. I could see them knocking off the Bruins with maybe their best player injured for this game. Not sure if he's going to play yet or not, but doubtful he will at least be 100% if he does play. And as you mentioned, the Cyclones, now that Auburn's out, they play a Miami team to advance to the Elite 8. I think this team is really good and I think it would be really interesting to see them, if they win and then Kansas wins, that's another Big 12 matchup there that I really want to see because Iowa State, as you mentioned, a tournament team, gritty defense, but then Kansas, all the recruits have looked probably the smoothest out of the 1 seeds, I would say, so far. Although they did play a Creighton team pretty close, but I think that would be a fantastic matchup to watch. So now that we've mentioned some of the underdogs and the Cinderella stories, let's talk about our favorites to win it all. Who do you got?
Well, starting off with that matchup you just talked about, the potential matchup, Iowa State and Kansas is a matchup I'm really looking forward to and I'm really hoping for. For one, I think Iowa State matches up well with Miami. I think they can get after it on the defensive end and force some turnovers, even though Miami has taken care of the ball well so far this tournament. But then when you look at that, Kansas is who I have coming out of that region. Like you said, they've been very consistent. They've looked good. I think they're probably one of the teams that you have to just kind of assume is going to get there, just given the favorability of their region. And then another team I have coming out is Villanova. I really like Villanova, led by Jay Wright. He's one of the best coaches in college basketball. And then Colin Gillespie is such a guy who just is clutch. He's cool under pressure, shoots free throws very, very well, shoots the 3-ball well. And I think Villanova is a team that's coming out of the South because I could see Arizona getting upset by Houston. So I think when you get a matchup of Houston and Villanova, that's a very, very gritty game. That will be a lot of tough defense in that one, but I have Villanova advancing to the Final Four. And then, like you said, with this matchup between UNC and UCLA, that's a marquee matchup. Those are 2 big powerhouse schools that everyone's going to be excited to watch. And I do think that one's kind of a toss-up because UNC has a very high ceiling when they get the good guard play because Manick is a star. He's been there and he continues to just produce. But with UCLA having Jaquez injured and that question mark there, that really does pose some challenges for that team, who just made a deep run last year to the Final Four. They're veteran, they're experienced, and they've got other guys like Juzang, like Tiger Campbell. But if they don't have Jaquez, that is really up in the air there. And then with another big matchup in the Sweet 16 is Texas Tech and Duke. Duke, obviously, it's Coach K's final run. People are kind of pulling for them just so Coach K can come out on top. But I like Texas Tech in this game. I think they're one of the most well-rounded teams in this tournament. They play well on the defensive end, and they're efficient on the offensive end. And Duke kind of just, they just keep chugging along. They don't really look all that impressive, all that great. They're not blowing teams out, but they've got the star players. They've got the firepower to continue on. But I do like Texas Tech going into the Final Four. So that gives me Kansas, Villanova, Texas Tech, and UCLA. And out of that, it's tough to say, but I think I'm going to go Villanova. I think I'm going to go Villanova.
It's always hard to doubt Jay Wright, because it seems every year you're like, well, this year clearly they have Gillespie, but in years past it's hard to point to a star player, but that's also the beauty of their program. They don't need a star player because every year they play a great team game, and it's done wonders for him. It's no wonder he was inducted to the Hall of Fame last year. So I definitely also, I believe, have them going to the Final Four. And I think they'll definitely pose a threat to any team they play just because they're super consistent and they just play really clean ball. And another team we haven't talked about yet is Gonzaga. And for me, it's really hard to put faith in them because every year they seem to be the clear favorite. It's like, well, this is the year Gonzaga's finally going to win it, and they just never do. So I think they'll win their next game. But I think the matchup against the winner of Texas Tech Duke does not favor them either way. I think if Texas Tech wins, I think Texas Tech is going to win it all in my book. That's who I had winning in my bracket. I think they pose a problem for a lot of teams because they're super gritty. We saw them play a red-hot Notre Dame team yesterday and really did not play well offensively, except for on the offensive glass. They're really good. Their big men are super consistent. They get tons of rebounds, but they're so good defensively. And it's going to pose a problem against Duke. And if they win and Gonzaga wins, I think they could be the team that could shut down Timmy and Holmgren on the inside because they've got guys like O'Banner, Bryson Williams, Adams. They've got a bunch of guys that just pose a problem on the inside, and they're gritty. And actually, that brings us to Kansas. On that side of the bracket, I had them winning out and actually playing Texas Tech as a Big 12 rematch in the finals. I saw their game earlier. I believe it was either a double or triple overtime game earlier in the year, and it was great to watch. And frankly, as just a fan of the game, I'm pulling for that again because how fun would it be to see that for a title game? So I could definitely see that being the rematch, and I got the Red Raiders going all the way under first-year head coach Mike Adams. He's been great, and it's hard to doubt them. So now moving on to the women's side of things, our very own Gamecocks, they have been really good so far, especially on the defensive end. We saw them limit Howard to 21 points, Miami to 33 yesterday. So what do you think can stop this U of SC team?
Well, first of all, the strength of this team is defense, like you said. Only 54 points given up in the first two games is an NCAA record for points given up in the first two games of a tournament. And when you look at this team led by Don Staley, who's probably the best coach in women's basketball, there's not a lot of flaws, But when you watched the game against Miami yesterday, they only put up 49 points. That's not going to get the job done once you start playing these better teams, these higher seeds. So you've got to shoot the ball better, and I think that's really the only thing holding this team back. If they can knock down shots from the perimeter especially, they have an unlimited ceiling, and they should go all the way as they are the favorite in this tournament, and they should win the championship. So obviously Aaliyah Boston, double-double machine. She's continuing to play well. She's doing her part. But if we can get the guards to shoot better on the perimeter, I think this team will go all the way.
Definitely. I think it's also about finding some better shots. I feel like if they facilitate the ball through Boston and their other big man, Cardosa, they'll definitely be really good, as no one can really match the inside presence that we have until maybe we get to the Final Four with Stanford or UConn. But earlier in the year, we saw both of those games go fairly well for us. So I could see, I definitely think this team has the potential to go all the way, and I think their biggest threat has been removed. The 2 seed in their region was the Iowa Hawkeyes, who lost yesterday to Creighton, to a former Iowa player on a game-winning 3. So, that's a great moment you love to see, especially as Gamecock fans. But I think a player like Caitlin Clark would pose the biggest threat because she can just absolutely just unleash points. And if, like yesterday, if we have a bad shooting night and someone were to just have an explosive offense performance, that would be, I think, the downfall of this team, because our perimeter defense is not as good as our interior defense, but, only time will tell. So, and as we mentioned, similar to the men's bracket, lots of upsets so far in the women's. Kind of it's unusual for the women's bracket. Usually we see the same 8 to 10 teams dominate. You see 1s and 2s only in the Final Four Elite 8 matchups. But this year we've seen 2 2-seeds go out already. So what does this mean as a whole for the tournament, and what does it mean for the Gamecocks here?
Like you mentioned, super surprising to see the women's teams in Baylor and Iowa get eliminated this early, because I know with my women's bracket, I had all the top seeds going far like you usually do, and my men's have been busted, so I was really just hoping for that, but obviously that didn't pan out. I think, like you mentioned, Iowa getting eliminated really does benefit the Gamecocks. Caitlin Clark is the best offensive player in women's basketball, leads the nation in both points and assists, which is unheard of. So Iowa being eliminated really does benefit South Carolina. And with a potential matchup between with either UNC or Arizona, which would be a rematch of last year's Final Four, that's a little bit of a scary game for Gamecock fans. Obviously, both those teams could give the Gamecocks trouble. They're very good teams, very good programs who are consistent. So if they get past them, I think they should have no problem going into the Final Four. And then when you get to the Final Four, I expect Stanford there. I expect either UConn or NC State, a team like that, to be there. And Stanford, led by the reigning champs, led by Haley Jones and led by Cameron Brink. I think they're probably the biggest threat to South Carolina right now. But there's a lot of teams out there. This is March. Anything can happen. But we'll just have to play it by ear and see.
Definitely. And, thus far the tournaments have been super exciting to watch. So I'm sure it can only get better from here. So that's going to do it this week for us on The Locker Room. I'm Spencer Ball. For Austin Nasser, we'll see you next week.